This video is made possible because of your feedback in the comments and to all the journalists who captured his moments. Thank you everyone, and we hope you enjoy it. Let us start this video with praises from world leaders toward Lee Kuan Yew, then we will move on to his critics.
Hello everybody. I just want to welcome the Minister Mentor of Singapore. This is one of the legendary figures of Asia in the 20th and 21st centuries. He is somebody who helped to trigger the Asian economic miracle. Singapore has been an outstanding friend and ally of the United States for many, many years. And so I am very much looking forward to the opportunity to hearing from the Minister Mentor his views on the evolving situation in Asia as I prepare for my upcoming trip both to Singapore and to other key nations in the region. And so I'm very grateful that he took the time. Welcome. And on behalf of the American people, we want to say thank you to the people of Singapore for being such outstanding friends.
Thank you, Mr. President, for those very warm.
His critics.
Your conflict with the Wall Street Journal.
A reporter wrote a story in 1988 or 89. A government that prides itself on its integrity was being accused of unloading in an IPO a dud company, which is completely untrue. So we said, please print this reply. They refused. And I said, in that case, we will restrict your circulation. You have done this to create controversy, then you will sell more papers to Singaporeans. So you'll sell more advertisements. Now, if you will remove your advertisement from your newspapers, we will not restrict you.
What did they say?
No. Our papers and the advertisements go together. So we said then we restrict you to 500 copies.
But that's not the spirit of a free press.
Oh, no. That's not the spirit of a fair, open press that allows a counter-argument.
Are they going to cover what the then Prime Minister said?
They don't.
They don't. All right.
They always put a spin on it.
Yeah. Do you believe in a free press? Do you believe in the idea of a free press?
I believe in truth.
Truth.
Yeah.
That's different, isn't it?
Yeah. And I don't believe that the press should be crusading and putting a spin on things.
Before we move on to more praise and critics, let us take you back way from the beginning. Chapter 1, where it all began. Lee Kuan Yew was born on September 16, 1923, in Singapore. Growing up in a privileged environment, Lee was exposed to a blend of Chinese traditions and British colonial influences, which shaped his worldview. Lee was the eldest of 5 children and grew up in a bilingual household where both English and Malay were spoken. This early exposure to languages also played a significant role in shaping his communication skills. Chapter 2, the rise of a young visionary. Lee was a very bright student, showing an early aptitude for learning. He attended Raffles Institution, one of the top schools in Singapore, where he excelled in academics. His outstanding performance earned him a scholarship to study law at the prestigious University of Cambridge in England. Lee's time at Cambridge was transformative. He achieved a remarkable double first-class honors in law. At Cambridge, Lee was awarded the Fitzwilliam Whitlock Prize for being the top student in law and English literature. His academic excellence continued after graduation, as he was called to the English Bar, Middle Temple, in 1950. He graduated with top honors, which boosted his confidence and reinforced his belief in the importance of education and meritocracy. During this time studying law at Cambridge University, he was exposed to British political debates and socialist ideas, which influenced his thinking about government and social structures. Also, it was during this period, Lee met and married Kwa Geok Chu, who was also a brilliant law student. Kwa was not only a supportive partner but also an intellectual equal. She shared Lee's passion for Singapore's future and played a crucial role in shaping his ideas and decisions. The couple's partnership was a cornerstone of Lee's personal and professional life, providing him with the support and encouragement needed to pursue his ambitions. Chapter 3. The queen behind the king, Kwa Geok Chu, was a remarkable woman whose brilliance often matched that of her famous husband. Kwa's intellect was evident from her youth, as she topped the 1936 senior Cambridge examination in Singapore and Malaya. Her academic journey led her to Cambridge University, where she made history as the first Malayan woman to graduate with first-class honors in law. Despite her exceptional achievements, Kwa chose to work behind the scenes, becoming Lee's most trusted advisor and his closest companion. Her sharp mind was instrumental in drafting the People's Action Party's constitution and refining Lee's political speeches and memoirs. Known as Lee's Tower of Strength, Kuo's influence extended far beyond her public persona, earning her deep respect in legal and political circles. Their 63-year marriage, which ended with her passing in 2010, stands as a testament to a powerful partnership that not only withstood personal challenges but also played a crucial role in nation building, leaving an indelible mark on Singapore's history. Chapter 4, World War II. Character forged through hell. During World War II, Lee Kuan Yew's life took a dramatic turn as Singapore fell under Japanese occupation. At the age of 19, Lee narrowly escaped death during the Japanese occupation. He was among a group of Chinese men rounded up by Japanese soldiers for a potential massacre, but was fortunately released after a screening process. Lee experienced firsthand the brutality of war and the sudden shift in power dynamics. Demonstrating his adaptability and quick thinking, he learned Japanese and secured a job as a translator for the Japanese news agency, Hodobu. This position allowed him to navigate the dangerous wartime environment and gain valuable insights into the workings of power and governance. The occupation had a profound impact on Lee, shaping his views on leadership, self-reliance, and the importance of a strong, independent nation. He witnessed the fall of British colonial rule and the harsh realities of life under occupation, experiences that would later fuel his determination to build a resilient and self-sufficient Singapore. These wartime years were formative for Lee, instilling in him a deep understanding of geopolitics and the vulnerabilities of small nations, which would significantly influence his future political career and vision for Singapore. Chapter 5. The Calling. After completing his studies in England, Lee Kuan Yew returned to Singapore in 1950. He started his legal practice and quickly gained a reputation as a skilled and determined lawyer. However, his true passion lay in politics. Lee's legal background helped him understand the importance of the rule of law and governance, which later influenced his political career. He began to actively engage in political activities, advocating for workers' rights and social justice. Chapter 6. The Birth of the Party. Formation of the People's Action Party, PAP. The founding of the People's Action Party on November 21, 1954, marked a turning point in Singapore's history, with Lee Kuan Yew at its helm as the first Secretary General. This pivotal moment brought together a diverse group of English-educated professionals, journalists, teachers, and trade unionists, united in their vision for an independent Singapore. The PAP's lightning bolt symbol, set against a red background, became a powerful symbol of action and progress. In its early days, the party strategically allied with pro-communist groups to broaden its support base, while campaigning for independence through peaceful means. Lee's charismatic leadership and the party's focus on anti-colonialism, workers' rights, and social justice struck a chord with many Singaporeans. In the early days of Singapore's political awakening, Lee Kuan Yew and the People's Action Party faced a diverse array of opponents, each with their own conflicts. The political landscape was complex due to many conflicting ideologies and interests. Chapter 7. Internal Conflicts and External Forces. A leader tested. In the early years of Singapore's journey toward independence, Lee Kuan Yew and the People's Action Party found themselves in the middle of a political storm. They had big dreams for Singapore, but not everyone was on their side. At first, they had some support from pro-communist groups who believed in radical changes. However, as Lee and the PAP started to move away from those extreme ideas, these groups turned against them, seeing the PAP as a betrayal of their cause. As the PAP grew stronger, other political parties began to feel threatened. They didn't like how the PAP was becoming the dominant force in Singapore's politics. Some trade unionists who represented workers also felt let down. They thought the PAP was not doing enough to support workers' rights and their needs. Some groups felt that the PAP's policies favored certain ethnicities over others, leading to feelings of unfairness. Additionally, people who cared about civil liberties, like freedom of speech and the right to protest, were worried about the PAP's strong control over the government. They believed that the PAP was too strict and did not allow enough freedom for individuals to express their opinions. Even people outside of Singapore noticed these tensions. Foreign commentators and governments criticized the PAP's approach, calling it too authoritarian. Meanwhile, some students and intellectuals disagreed with the PAP's policies on education and culture, believing they stifled creativity and independent thought. The year 1957 marked a turning point when left-wing members of the PAP, led by the charismatic Lim Chin Siong, challenged Lee's leadership. This internal struggle was like a family feud, with different factions fighting for control of the party's direction. The conflict reached a cracking point in 1961 when the left-wing group dramatically split from the PAP. Lim Chin-seon formed a new party called the Barisan Socialis. And you won't believe what happened next.
One of many under suspicion was radical leader Lim Chin-seong. Giving a rare interview at his union headquarters, he confronted accusations.
I'm sick to answer this question. This is not the first time I'm being asked the same question. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life to answer this question. I tell you categorically, I'm not a communist.
But in raids across the island, Lim, Fong, and more than 200 left-wing colleagues were arrested. They would not emerge from prison for another 3 years. Unchallenged in his party, Lee Kuan Yew could now prepare for the elections ahead. In July 1961, Lim Chin-seong led a mass defection from the PAP. Setting up the far-left Barisan Socialist Party, he campaigned passionately against merger. With the masses flocking to the new banner, the PAP faced total collapse.
We are quite confident if there is a general election, we can beat the government. Well, whether we beat the government, no, but I'm sure the government will be defeated. I'm quite confident today. We can wait for that.
The radical leftists stood a real chance of unseating Lee Kuan Yew from power. With elections imminent, 3 unlikely bedfellows were brought together by the fear of Singapore becoming a pro-communist enclave. The British colonial rulers, the anti-colonial Chinese Prime Minister, and the Malay leader suspicious of Chinese intentions. The Tunku reluctantly conceded that Singapore could merge with Malaya, but only when unfinished business with the leftists had been taken care of.
In January '63, Tunku decided that he wanted them locked up before he took over. He wanted the burden to be carried by the British. And I said, let's wait until after merger. Tunku says, no, we arrest them now, or there will be no merger.
A final showdown with the pro-communists was imminent.
We had this premonition that sooner or later we would all be detained. It was after 12 midnight. I was in Singapore's Norfolk Road. There was an intense knocking at the door. When I opened it, standing in front of me was my neighbor. He had come to arrest me. He apologized profusely, and I said it was all right. He was just carrying out his duties.
More than 100 left-wing radicals were arrested during Operation Cold Storm, and rioting broke out in protest. But Fong Swee-swan and Lim Chin-seong would remain in political cold storage for the rest of the decade. After attempting suicide, Lim was later sent into exile.
This period of political turbulence would shape the future of Singapore, testing Lee Kuan Yew's leadership and ultimately influencing the country's path to independence and beyond. Chapter 8: The Struggle for Independence. The road to independence was not easy. Lee and the PAP had to be clever. The final push for full independence came through a merger with Malaysia in 1963. However, this union was short-lived, and Singapore found itself unexpectedly independent in 1965. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's leader, thought this merger would help his small country grow stronger and more secure. At first, many people were hopeful about the new country called Malaysia, but soon big problems started to appear. Singapore and Malaysia had different ideas about how to run the country. They argued about money and how to treat people of different races fairly. These disagreements led to angry protests and even some fighting in the streets. Lee Kuan Yew tried hard to make things work, but the problems kept getting worse. After only 2 years, it became clear that Singapore and Malaysia couldn't stay together. On August 9, 1965, Singapore suddenly became its own country. This separation came as a surprise to everyone, even Lee Kuan Yew. He famously broke down in tears during a televised press conference announcing the separation.
What has happened, and be firm, be calm. We are going to have a multiracial nation in Singapore. We will set the example. This is not a Malay nation, this is not a Chinese nation, this is not an Indian nation. Everybody will have his place, equal. Language, culture, religion.
Chapter 9. Independence achieved, and more struggle begins. When Singapore gained independence from Malaysia in 1965, the country faced immense challenges. It had no natural resources, a small population, and an economy dependent on trading with other countries. Lee Kuan Yew recognized the need to build a strong and sustainable economy. His first priority was to create jobs for Singaporeans. He launched industrialization efforts, attracting foreign investment and developing a skilled workforce. The Economic Development Board, EDB, was established to drive these efforts, successfully attracting multinational corporations, MNCs, to set up operations in Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew and his government had to quickly develop strategies for national survival. This led to the rapid development of Singapore's armed forces, as the country now had to provide for its own defense. Chapter 10. Economic Revolution and Redefining Singapore's future. Lee's ability to attract MNCs to Singapore was pivotal in transforming the economy. By 1970, over 100 MNCs had set up operations in Singapore, creating thousands of jobs and setting the stage for rapid economic growth. Lee Kuan Yew's economic plans were grounded in policies that work in practice, not in theory. He worked on expanding Singapore's economy by reducing its dependence on trade with other countries. The government promoted manufacturing, financial services, and later, technology sectors. By maintaining low taxes, reducing corruption, and ensuring political stability, Singapore became an attractive destination for investors. Singapore's economic growth was one of the fastest in the world during Lee's leadership. The country's GDP per capita grew from around $500 in 1965 to over $55,000 by 2015, making it one of the wealthiest nations globally. Chapter 11. A Home for All. Recognizing the need for affordable housing, Lee Kuan Yew implemented a comprehensive public housing program through the Housing and Development Board, HDB. The government built high-quality, affordable flats for the majority of Singaporeans. By the 1980s, over 80% of Singapore's population lived in HDB flats. This not only provided shelter, but also fostered a sense of community and ownership among citizens. Singapore's public housing program is considered one of the most successful in the world. The home ownership rate in Singapore is over 90%, one of the highest globally, thanks to Lee's policies. Chapter 12. Building Harmony and the Strength in Diversity. Lee Kuan Yew was very focused on keeping racial harmony in Singapore, a country with people from many different ethnic backgrounds. He created policies like the Ethnic Integration Policy, EIP, to make sure that public housing areas had a good mix of different ethnic groups. This helped prevent certain neighborhoods from being only one ethnicity, which promoted social unity. Lee also made bilingualism important, requiring all students in Singapore to learn English and their mother tongue. This policy helped build a strong national identity while keeping cultural traditions alive. Chapter 13. Nurturing Talents. Education was another cornerstone of Lee's leadership. He believed in creating a meritocratic society where individuals could succeed based on their abilities. The education system was designed to identify and nurture talent, with a strong emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, subjects. Scholarships were provided to top students, allowing them to study abroad and bring back knowledge and skills to benefit Singapore. Singapore consistently ranks among the top countries in global education assessments, such as the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA, a testament to the effectiveness of Lee's education policies. Chapter 14. The Foundations of a Safe Society. Lee Kuan Yew's leadership style was often described as benevolent authoritarianism. He believed in the need for strict laws and harsh penalties to maintain social order and stability. Under his leadership, Singapore implemented strict laws against corruption, drug trafficking, and other serious crimes. The country developed a reputation for being one of the safest and least corrupt nations in the world. Singapore's Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, CPIB, was established in 1952, even before independence. Under Lee's leadership, Singapore's Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau stands as a formidable guardian of integrity in the city-state's governance. Established in 1952 during British colonial rule, it's one of the world's oldest anti-corruption agencies, initially tasked with cleaning up the then-corrupt police force. When Lee Kuan Yew took the reins as Prime Minister in 1959, he transformed the CPIB into a powerful weapon against crimes, giving it teeth that could bite into corruption at any level of society. The Bureau's officers wield impressive authority, able to arrest suspects without warrants and conduct searches, all while operating under a veil of secrecy to protect their informants. Reporting directly to the Prime Minister's office, the CPIB fears no rank or position. Ministers and top civil servants are just as subject to its scrutiny as any other citizen. This no-nonsense approach, backed by Singapore's tough anti-corruption laws, has played a crucial role in sculpting the nation's reputation as one of the least corrupt countries globally. Beyond its role as corruption's nemesis, the CPIB also works tirelessly on prevention and education, striving to create a society where integrity is ingrained in every aspect of public life. However, critics have pointed out a few concerns about the CPIB. The CPIB is closely connected to the Prime Minister's office, which could lead to bias. Additionally, there's no independent watchdog overseeing the CPIB. The agency operates very secretly, making it hard for the public to know what's going on. Some people also think the CPIB might be softer on government-linked individuals, though there's not much proof to support this. Despite these criticisms, many countries admire the CPIB as a model for fighting corruption. The agency has successfully created a culture in Singapore where corruption is seen as a serious offense. This reputation has made Singapore one of the least corrupt nations in the world. As Singapore continues to grow, the CPIB faces new challenges. Corruption is becoming more complex and harder to detect, meaning the agency must adapt and evolve. They're also trying to balance their tough approach to corruption with concerns about civil liberties, ensuring they don't overstep their boundaries. In the end, the CPIB is like a strict teacher who's excellent at keeping the class in order. With no school principal, only the head of the school board is allowed to intervene. Some students might think they're a bit too strict. While the CPIB has undoubtedly made Singapore a more honest place, the ongoing debate about how it operates is an important part of a healthy democracy. Chapter 15: The Infrastructure That Propelled a Nation. Lee Kuan Yew understood that world-class infrastructure was essential for economic growth and improving the quality of life for Singaporeans. His government invested heavily in developing the island's infrastructure, including transportation, telecommunications, and public utilities. The Changi Airport, opened in 1981, became one of the world's best airports. Changi Airport has consistently been ranked as #1 airports, winning numerous awards for its efficiency, design, and passenger experience. Chapter 16: Urban Planning for Environmental Balance. Lee Kuan Yew was a pioneer in urban planning and environmental sustainability. He envisioned Singapore as a garden city, where greenery would be integrated into urban spaces. The government implemented extensive tree planting campaigns, and parks and nature reserves were developed across the island. Lee also prioritized the cleanliness of the city, enforcing strict laws against littering and pollution. Singapore's commitment to environmental sustainability is evident in its ranking as one of the greenest cities in the world. The city-state has over 50% green cover, with numerous parks, nature reserves, and vertical gardens integrated into urban developments. Chapter 17: A Healthier Future. Lee Kuan Yew's government also focused on providing quality healthcare and social welfare for Singaporeans. The healthcare system was designed to be efficient and affordable, with a mix of public and private providers. The Central Provident Fund, CPF, was established to ensure that citizens could save for retirement, healthcare, and housing. This mandatory savings scheme has been credited with providing financial security for Singaporeans in their old age. Singapore's healthcare system is ranked among the best in the world, known for its efficiency and high-quality care. The country has one of the highest life expectancies globally, with an average of over 84 years. Chapter 18: The Art of Foreign Affairs. Lee Kuan Yew was a skilled diplomat, adept at navigating the complexities of international relations. He established strong ties with major powers, including the United States, China, and Japan, while maintaining Singapore's independence and neutrality. Lee played a crucial role in the founding of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, in 1967, which aimed to promote regional stability and cooperation. Lee Kuan Yew was highly respected by global leaders, earning the nickname the Grand Master for his strategic thinking and diplomatic skills. He was a trusted advisor to many world leaders, including U.S. presidents and Chinese leaders. Chapter 19: Navigating the Economic Storm. Lee Kuan Yew's leadership was tested during economic crises, such as the 1973 oil crisis and the 1997 Asian financial crisis. In both instances, his government implemented swift and decisive measures to stabilize the economy. During the Asian financial crisis, Singapore's strong financial reserves and sound economic policies allowed it to weather the storm better than many of its neighbors. Singapore's financial reserves, managed by the Government of Singapore Investment Corporation, GIC, and Temasek Holdings, have grown significantly under Lee's leadership. These reserves have provided a buffer against economic shocks and are among the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. Chapter 20. Strategies for Political Stability. Lee Kuan Yew's People's Action Party maintained a firm grip on power throughout his leadership, winning every election with overwhelming majorities. Lee believed that political stability was crucial for economic growth and development. His government was known for its efficiency, with a strong emphasis on meritocracy and getting results. Lee Kuan Yew's political dominance was not without controversy. His government was criticized for its strict control over the media, limited political freedoms, and use of defamation lawsuits against political opponents. However, many Singaporeans credit his leadership with bringing prosperity and stability to the country. Chapter 21. Shaping the Knowledge Economy. Lee Kuan Yew recognized the importance of technology and innovation in driving economic growth. In the 1990s, his government launched initiatives to transform Singapore into a knowledge-based economy. The National Science and Technology Board, now known as the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, or ASTAR, was established to promote research and development. Singapore also invested in building a robust information and communications technology, ICT, infrastructure, laying the foundation for the country's status as a global technology hub. Singapore is now one of the world's leading technology hubs, with a thriving startup ecosystem and strong presence of major tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Apple. The country's emphasis on innovation and R&D has contributed to its reputation as a leader in fields like artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and fintech. Chapter 22. The Curtain Close, the Final Call. Lee Kuan Yew stepped down as Prime Minister in 1990 but remained an influential figure in Singaporean politics as Senior Minister and later as Minister Mentor. His legacy is deeply ingrained in Singapore's identity and development. Under his leadership, Singapore transformed from a third-world country into a first-world nation, known for its economic success, efficient governance, and high quality of life. Lee Kuan Yew's legacy extends beyond Singapore's borders. His leadership model, often referred to as the Singapore model, has been studied and emulated by other countries seeking to achieve rapid development and economic success. Lee Kuan Yew's leadership transformed Singapore from a struggling port city into a global economic powerhouse. By implementing strategic policies, such as attracting foreign investments and developing world-class infrastructure, he drove Singapore's GDP from just $1 billion in 1960 to over $300 billion by the time he stepped down. His focus on education and innovation fostered a highly skilled workforce, turning Singapore into one of the world's wealthiest nations, with a GDP per capita exceeding $60,000 today. Singapore's rapid rise was so remarkable that it's often referred to as an economic miracle. The country also became a major global financial hub, with the Singapore Exchange ranking among the top in the world. Lee's pragmatic governance, combined with a vision for long-term economic stability, set the foundation for a nation that, despite its small size, plays a significant role in the global economy today. Lee Kuan Yew passed away on March 23, 2015 at the age of 91. His death prompted an outpouring of grief, with hundreds of thousands of Singaporeans queuing for hours to pay their respects. Interestingly, even in his final days, Lee remained a symbol of resilience. Despite declining health, he continued to monitor Singapore's progress. World leaders, from U.S. President Barack Obama to Chinese President Xi Jinping, paid tribute to him, highlighting his global influence. A lesser-known fact is that Lee had requested a simple cremation with no monuments, a final gesture in line with his pragmatic leadership style.
I think Lee Kuan Yew was a great man. I had the great fortune of becoming a personal friend, and we saw each other many, many times. He stayed at my house, and I've often visited Singapore. There was never a month when we weren't talking to each other. So I will miss him, but more important, the world will miss him. Lee Kuan Yew was a very meticulous person. So when you were invited, before I came to Singapore, he'd send me the menu of the meals that he was going to offer me and give me a chance to comment that if I didn't like it, that I could change. And that's never happened to me. That's never happened to me anywhere. But I think what he said, what he seemed to be is what he was. He was committed to Singapore, and he was committed to an international world in which small countries could survive. And he went around the world preaching this and succeeding.
His insights and predictions on the rise of Asia, the future of China, and global trends have proven remarkably accurate. This video delves into the breadth of Lee's foresight, from his warnings about Australia's economic future to his predictions on the growth of entrepreneurship and technology in Asia. In the late 1970s, China embarked on a remarkable journey of economic reform and opening up, transforming itself from a planned economy to a market-driven powerhouse. One man who foresaw China's meteoric rise was Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father of modern Singapore. This video explores Lee's insightful predictions and his perspective on China's unique path to success, providing a fascinating glimpse into the country's remarkable economic and geopolitical ascent. Lee's predictions extended beyond Shenzhen's rise. He also foresaw China's ability to manufacture its own aircraft within 2 to 3 generations, a prediction that has since come true. The development of the C-919 airliner by the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, COMAC, is a testament to China's growing technological capabilities and its ambition to challenge the dominance of Western aviation giants like Airbus and Boeing. Lee understood that China's unique cultural and historical context would shape its path to development, rather than following a Western democratic model. He believed that the Chinese people were determined to unify and build a modern, powerful, and wealthy nation, driven by their deep-rooted belief that a strong center is the key to national security and stability. Lee's insights on China's future extended beyond its economic prowess. He recognized that as China's economy grew, it would gain the resources to build up its political, strategic, and global influence. He predicted that the world order dominated by the West would gradually shift, with China and India sharing the top spots in the latter half of the 21st century. Even Napoleon once said, "There sleeps China. God pity us if she wakes. Let her sleep." Lee's advice to the United States was to accept China's rise and ensure that it felt welcomed at the top table of global affairs. He emphasized the importance of China playing by the rules of the game, rather than engaging in direct competition, particularly in areas like military technology where the United States held a clear advantage. Stepping away from China, Lee Kuan Yew also had insightful predictions and observations about other countries and global trends. In 1980, he famously warned Australia that it risked becoming the poor white trash of Asia if it didn't open up its economy and reduce unemployment. While Australia has since performed well economically, Lee's warning highlighted the importance of adaptability and competitiveness in the rapidly changing global landscape. Lee also recognized the importance of entrepreneurship and technology innovation in Asia, despite the region's historical preference for education and government jobs over private enterprise. In a speech in 2000, he pitched East Asia, particularly Singapore, as a destination for U.S. technology investors, predicting the rise of a critical mass of technopreneurs that would drive the digital economy. This prediction has proven accurate, with the emergence of tech giants and unicorns across the region. Lee's perspective on India's growth trajectory was often one of disappointment, as he believed the country's political bureaucracy, caste system were a class structure that is determined by birth. Lack of unity and brain drain would hold it back compared to China. However, he expressed admiration for certain Indian leaders, such as Narayana Murthy, the founder of Infosys, stating that if every politician in India was like him, the country would become one of the fastest growing in the world. Lee's insights were not limited to the economic and technological realms. He also weighed in on geopolitical issues, such as the US invasion and occupation of Afghanistan. As early as 2009, he said that trying to make a country out of Afghanistan is a distraction, and that the US could not solve all the problems in the world, a view that was validated by the ultimately failed American withdrawal from the country in 2021. Lee's predictions about the political situation in Myanmar also demonstrated his keen understanding of the region. In 2001, he said that Aung San Suu Kyi's vision of Myanmar becoming a democracy was unrealistic, given the power of the military, a prophecy that would prove true with the military coup in 2021 that removed Aung San Suu Kyi from power. Lee's foresight extended even to the decline of once dominant companies, such as Nokia. In 2008, he predicted that the tech giant's Nokia success was a fluke, and that it might not be able to survive the competition from Asian competitors, a prediction that came true as Nokia's market share crumbled in the face of the rise of smartphones. Despite his many rewards, and the global respect he commanded, Lee Kuan Yew also predicted that he might become the villain after his death, as history could potentially look less kindly on his authoritarian rule and restrictions on civil liberties. This self-awareness and willingness to acknowledge the potential negative aspects of his legacy is a testament to Lee's complex and nuanced understanding of his own place in history. Lee Kuan Yew's remarkable foresight and insights continue to resonate today, offering a unique perspective on the rapidly evolving global landscape. From the rise of Asia to the challenges facing Western nations, his predictions have largely proven accurate, underscoring his deep understanding of the cultural, economic, and geopolitical forces shaping the world. As the world navigates an increasingly complex future, Lee's legacy serves as a reminder of the value of clear-eyed analysis and a willingness to challenge conventional wisdom.
The story of Lee Kuan Yew and his involvement with the CIA is one that mixes mystery, political moves, and the rise of a strong leader who outsmarts one of the world's most powerful spy agencies. It is a tale of standing up, national independence, and smart political skills that would shape Singapore's position on the world stage. There are 4 key lessons from this story that can guide us in our daily lives at the end of the video. Chapter 1. The Suspicion. The early 1960s were turbulent years for Southeast Asia. Colonial powers were retreating, and newly independent nations were pushing for political identity and survival. In the fog of this chaos was Singapore, a tiny city-state with no natural resources, situated at a strategic maritime crossroads. The island's leadership was under the control of a new, energetic leader, Lee Kuan Yew. Lee had ambitions for Singapore, a grand vision of transforming this small, fragmented colony into a prosperous and modern nation. But what lay ahead for him was not only internal struggles, but also the tricky game of geopolitics. The United States, embroiled in the Cold War and deeply suspicious of communist influences in Asia, had turned its eyes towards Singapore. In 1965, Lee Kuan Yew, now Prime Minister, faced a decision that would define his relationship with the superpowers. He sought to ensure Singapore's independence and economic survival by aligning with the West, but he was no puppet. His shrewdness, determination, and desire to protect Singapore's autonomy would set him on a collision course with the CIA. Chapter 2. The Rising Tensions. The United States saw the rise of communism in Southeast Asia as an existential threat. With Vietnam inching towards full-scale war, Washington's desire to prevent communism from taking root in other parts of Asia had intensified. Lee Kuan Yew, though not a communist, was seen as an unpredictable leader by the West. His People's Action Party had leftist elements, and there was growing concern that he could potentially lean towards socialist or communist ideals. The United States was afraid that the domino effect theory might happen with the spread of communism, so they went all out to stop it in Vietnam and other Asian countries. For anyone unfamiliar with the domino effect theory, here's a brief explanation. It describes how one event can trigger a series of similar events, like a chain reaction. Imagine a line of dominoes. When the first one falls, it causes the others to topple one by one. This idea is often used to explain how one action can lead to a bigger impact over time. In politics, the theory was used during the Cold War to explain how the spread of communism might happen. The United States believed that if one country in a region became communist, neighboring countries would follow, just like a line of falling dominoes. This idea led the US to intervene in places like Vietnam to stop the first domino from falling. By 1960, CIA operatives were embedded throughout the region. They worked secretly, attempting to gather intelligence on Lee's intentions, who his allies were, and whether Singapore could be turned into a defensive line against communist influence. However, Lee was always a step ahead. He was well aware of the spies in his country. The early stages of Singapore's administration saw Lee play a dangerous game. In public, he courted Western support, securing economic deals and defense agreements. But behind closed doors, he quietly built an independent intelligence organization, the Internal Security Department, ISD, modeled on the British system, designed to counter any foreign interference. One day, an intercepted communication confirmed Lee's suspicions. There was a CIA network operating in Singapore, funneling money to opposition parties to destabilize his government. The report was explosive. The superpower was interfering in Singapore's fragile democracy. Chapter 3. Lee Strikes Back. What happened next was not what the CIA had expected. Most leaders, fearing the wrath of the United States, would have buried such evidence. Lee, however, decided to take an audacious step. He would confront the U.S. directly. Lee's invitation to the U.S. Embassy in Singapore was laced with diplomacy, but sharpened with the threat of exposure. The American ambassador sat across from Lee when he presented the evidence. The room was thick with tension. In a cold, measured voice, Lee Kuan Yew made it clear that he was not to be trifled with. Singapore might be small, but its sovereignty was not for sale. He demanded the immediate termination of all CIA activities on Singaporean soil. And in a final, calculated blow, Lee hinted that if the U.S. didn't comply, he would go public with the scandal, exposing the CIA's interference to the world. The threat was enough to send Washington into a scramble. In the height of the Cold War, the U.S. couldn't afford a scandal that would undermine its credibility among emerging nations. The American government knew that Lee was not bluffing. Hear this from Lee Kuan Yew himself.
I want to be quite frank with you here. If the British withdraw, I'm prepared to go on with the Australians and the New Zealanders, but I'm not prepared to go on with the Americans.
Why not, Mr. Prime Minister? Why do you think America...
Well, can I put it this way? I think there are highly intelligent, well-meaning often people, and some of their leaders, like Kennedy, the late president, had signs of growing greatness, depth. But, you know, by and large, the administration lacks depth and judgment or wisdom, which comes out of an accumulation of knowledge of human beings and human situations over a long period of time. That's lacking. And it's not their fault. What have they got? 300-400 years of history, and they've become a nation just recently. You know, I'll tell you this. I've had only three experiences with the Americans. And they did not intend any harm in each one of them. But the tragedy was they did real harm. First, this is old stuff now. We caught an American CIA agent trying to subvert our intelligence special branch officer. Bribe him so that the special branch officer will feed the CIA, because the CIA wants to know what's happening. I mean, subverting a Singapore officer. The man might have succeeded, but I'm proud to say that the officer offered large sum of money and continuing sums of money. This was in 1960. Refused and reported the matter to his chief, who reported it to me. Man was caught, locked up, and it was on razor's edge whether we charged him in open court or not. No, let me explain this. When I told the American government, all right, we keep quiet, you take this man away, $100 million to the Singapore government for economic development. You know? No, listen to me. I didn't tell, you know, I never spoke to the Americans direct, because, you know, they lack the finesse, and, you know, they may say, yes, hey, give it to you. Why not? Why should the Singapore government just give to you, to me, which would have ruined me? But through an intermediary, they offered me and my party $10 million. I mean, the insult, you know. I told them, keep it. No, this is important. Do not forget this. And this is why I have not the slightest doubt that my two colleagues, Dr. To and Mr. Rajaratnam, go on this tour of Afro-Asia, which they'll do as soon as the local affairs are settled. I have not the slightest doubt that Afro-Asia will be with us. You see, unlike if Cuba with an American base, with American sovereignty, is independent and not a new colonialist stooge, then me, the people of Singapore, owners of the British bases. I mean, I could give you a notice, 24 hours notice, you have to quit. Or you're committing an act of aggression with very serious consequences.
Oh, very true.
Oh, yeah, surely.
Wait until you see what we can learn from this exchanges near the end of the video. Chapter 4, The Public Reckoning. In a dramatic press conference that shook the diplomatic world, Lee Kuan Yew announced that Singapore had uncovered a foreign plot to interfere in its internal politics. Without naming the US directly, he made it clear that a major global power was attempting to destabilize his government. He described the lengths to which his administration would go to protect Singapore's independence, and laid out a narrative of Singapore as a sovereign state standing against foreign manipulation. The announcement was a masterpiece. By exposing the operation, Lee demonstrated his control over the situation. It positioned him as the protector of Singapore's fragile democracy, someone who would not bow to external pressure, not even from a superpower like the United States. Chapter 5, The CIA's Humiliation. Behind the scenes, the CIA was furious and humiliated. They had underestimated Lee Kuan Yew's resolve and political savvy. They had miscalculated, and now Lee had not only thwarted their plans, but had also dealt a significant blow to their credibility in Southeast Asia. In a rare and shocking move, the U.S. State Department agreed to Lee's demands. The CIA operatives involved were recalled, and the U.S. issued a diplomatic apology, though unofficial, to Singapore. The covert interference had backfired. Instead of destabilizing Lee's government, it had fortified it. The scandal turned Lee into a hero for his people, a leader who had stood up to the world's most powerful nation and emerged victorious. From that moment forward, Lee would maintain a careful but firm relationship with the U.S. and other powers, which helped to harden his image as an unyielding defender of Singapore's independence. Chapter 6, The Lion Roars. In the years following the CIA debacle, Lee Kuan Yew transformed Singapore into one of the most prosperous and stable nations in the world. His iron-fisted leadership style, though often criticized, was effective. Singapore became known as the Lion City, a powerful economic force despite its size. But the shadow of that confrontation with the CIA never fully disappeared. It became part of the legend of Lee Kuan Yew, a leader who, against all odds, defied the odds and the might of the world's most powerful intelligence agency. The lesson Lee imparted was clear. No matter how small a nation might be, it could stand tall if led with determination, intelligence, and fearlessness. Here are the 4 lessons that we can draw from this story. Lesson number 1, how one theory destroyed millions of lives. The United States leader during this era believed in the domino theory so blindly which failed to pan out in practice. Vietnam failed to the communist, but many other neighboring countries remained with their political ground. This theory is not only proven false, but killed so many civilians, and both sides were greatly injured because of this theory. The effect is still ongoing today with the Agent Orange chemical that was unleashed 60 years ago. The lesson here is we can't cold-heartedly follow a theory that is not proven to be true. This theory is estimated to have killed roughly 1.5 to 2 million Vietnamese and roughly 58,000 soldiers on the United States side. Lesson number 2, stand firm in your beliefs. Lee Kuan Yew's unwavering commitment to protecting Singapore's sovereignty, despite facing a powerful force like the CIA, teaches us the importance of standing up for what we believe in. Whether in personal or professional life, staying true to your principles can earn respect and lead to success. Lesson number 3, strategic thinking. Lee's ability to outmaneuver the CIA through careful planning and calculated decisions shows how important it is to think strategically, especially in difficult situations. This lesson applies to managing challenges in life by staying one step ahead and using intelligence to overcome obstacles. Lesson number 4, small actions can make a big impact. Despite Singapore's size, Lee's leadership proved that even small nations or individuals can make a significant difference. This encourages us to believe that no matter how small or insignificant we may feel, with determination and clear vision, we can create a lasting impact. In the end, Lee Kuan Yew's story with the CIA was not just a tale of espionage and political drama. It was a lesson in leadership, sovereignty, and the power of a determined leader who refused to be a pawn in a global game. For the people of Singapore, it became another reason to believe in the vision of a man who turned a vulnerable island into a symbol of resilience and strength. And as Lee once famously said, "If you deprive yourself of the talent of leadership, you injure your country." He would prove time and again that he was the leader Singapore needed, the lion who outwitted the eagle, but the lion knew when to stay cool as well.
You take chances. You vote in jokers, cranks, weak men, worse, charlatans, with some gift of the gab. You run a very serious risk of losing everything you have.
Across many of the world's most developed countries, a troubling trend has emerged. A marked decline in the quality, stability, and trustworthiness of political leadership. In just the past decade, countries like the United Kingdom have cycled through numerous leaders, 6 prime ministers in 8 years. Japan's political landscape has shifted with the long-dominant Liberal Democratic Party losing its influence, and French President Emmanuel Macron's approval ratings have fallen to all-time lows. The question looms, why are today's leaders failing to inspire confidence, stability, and progress? Where have all the truly impactful leaders gone? The changing nature of leadership challenges. In the past, leaders like Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and even John F. Kennedy emerged during defining historical moments, world wars, economic depressions, and intense ideological conflicts. They took on challenges that required decisive actions, clear values, and strong leadership. However, the current political climate is vastly different. Today's societies are marked by relative stability and prosperity. Yet this comfort seems to have paradoxically contributed to a decline in leadership quality. It's worth examining why modern leaders, in a time when challenges require equally strong decisions, struggle to gain respect, impact, and long-term support.
If you read the present media, you say that the world is bereft of great leaders. There was no Winston Churchill or Roosevelt. In my lifetime, they were great men. I lived my most impressionable years when they made massive decisions that decided the shape of the post-war world. Do you have such people today?
A detour from public service. One of the factors contributing to this leadership decline is the fixation on wealth and personal gain. In previous generations, public service was seen as a noble calling, but today, young, talented individuals are often captivated by the lucrative rewards of the private sector. Rather than pursuing political careers where leaders face intense scrutiny and limited financial rewards, they turn toward high-paying roles in finance, technology, or entrepreneurship. Public service, for many, no longer holds the appeal it once did. This shift has led to a talent drain in politics, where those left to fill leadership roles may not always have the dedication or capabilities needed to address complex societal issues.
I take this present generation, the preoccupation with wealth. They open Fortune 500, all the billionaires. They open Forbes, so many multi-billionaires. So many dot-com chaps have made billions out of nothing. They're just completely swept away by all this. So we've got young administrative officers who've served 6-7 years. Can I take no pay leave? Whilst the dot-com companies are hot, I want to try. The motivations are different. If I were now 20 years old, I might be joining the dot-com venture capitalists, and I'll probably make $1 million or $2 million.
Talent flowing to corporate giants. In countries like the United States, highly capable individuals frequently choose the private sector over public service. With corporate leaders managing massive budgets and making decisions that impact millions, roles in companies like Amazon, Apple, and Tesla often offers more influence, and certainly more compensation, than government positions. When CEOs are managing enterprises with revenues comparable to small countries' GDPs, the allure of business can far outweigh the appeals of government work. Talented leaders gravitate toward corporate boards, where the rewards and lifestyle are more attractive than the pressures and criticisms that come with public roles. As a result, politics often becomes a field for less experienced or less qualified individuals. Hear this from Lee Kuan Yew himself.
Our ablest and our best into politics. It doesn't happen in many countries. You know, in America, the ablest and the best become heads of corporations, each one a big empire. If you run General Motors or IBM, your turnover is about 50 times Singapore's GNP, and you can afford your private jet, homes, holidays everywhere. The result is elected office is sought after mostly by those with some extraordinary egotistical urge. The ones who don't like to be seen kissing babies, pumping hands, running all around the place, making endless speeches, just stay in corporate life and do well.
Money and morality in politics. One major difference between public and private sector leadership is compensation. Politicians are generally paid far less than corporate leaders, which can lead to a number of issues. Underpaid politicians may be more vulnerable to alternative forms of income, such as high-paying speaking engagements, book deals, lobbying and consulting positions, and patronage, and perks that create conflicts of interest. Some nations have attempted to solve this issue in unique ways. Singapore, for instance, offers some of the highest salaries for politicians worldwide, a strategy intended to attract highly competent leaders and discourage corruption. This model has seen considerable success in maintaining clean governance and a robust economy. Still, the issue of compensation remains problematic in many countries, where lower pay can mean that only those with external financial resources can afford to serve, often skewing political representation toward the wealthy and elite. The media revolution and leadership. The landscape of political leadership has been fundamentally reshaped by the modern media. Today's leaders are under constant scrutiny, not just from traditional news sources, but from an unrelenting stream of social media content. Media has turned political leadership into a spectacle, where image often outweighs substance. Politicians are now packaged like products, branded by teams of media professionals who focus on making them appear relatable and popular, rather than focusing on their actual leadership skills. This transformation is largely due to the need to appeal to the widest audience possible, often reducing complex ideas to catchy slogans or sound bites. The rise of spin doctors and media consultants has made winning elections more about marketing savvy than about proving the capacity to govern effectively. The Internet age, a double-edged sword. The Internet and social media have further complicated the role of a leader. With platforms like Twitter and Instagram, leaders face unprecedented levels of public visibility and criticism. Social media amplifies diverse voices and opinions, making it difficult to build consensus, provides immediate feedback loops that can quickly erode credibility if a leader makes a misstep, competes for the public's attention, often prioritizing drama over substance, and turns minor mistakes into potentially career-ending crises. For many leaders, the universal nature of social media adds another layer of pressure. They must navigate the dual challenges of making impactful, long-term decisions while managing the immediate fallout of public reactions. Society's changing expectations. Modern societies are generally more prosperous and safer than in previous generations, which has led to a shift in expectations. Today's populations often expect prosperity and stability as rights rather than privileges, and this shift has altered the leadership dynamic. Leaders of past generations had to earn the trust and loyalty of citizens who believed they were fighting for their survival. People accepted sacrifices and hard work because they felt they were investing in their future and in the survival of their society. Leaders could ask for commitment and even sacrifice, with the understanding that the stakes were high and the goals worthwhile. In contrast, today's leaders operate in a context where the public expects comfort and ease. As a result, leaders are more frequently required to seek public approval before implementing significant changes. Citizens often demand policies that enhance their comfort without considering the longer-term costs. Politicians must cater to these expectations, frequently promoting an easier lifestyle rather than asking for sacrifices or support for difficult but necessary policies. Short-term thinking. over long-term vision. Modern governments face immense pressure to prioritize short-term popularity over long-term stability. This mindset manifests in a variety of ways that compromise effective leadership. Politicians increasingly promise extensive benefits without adequate funding, relying on debt to meet their commitments without directly raising taxes. This approach is attractive in the short term, but places an unsustainable burden on future generations. Many governments shy away from necessary reforms if they risk being unpopular, opting instead to maintain the status quo for fear of voter backlash. As a result, long-term challenges remain unresolved, adding to a sense of instability and crisis in leadership. Diminishing respect for leaders. In many democracies, respect for authority has waned, making it harder for leaders to command support and implement challenging policies. Politicians are often mimicked in the media and online, undermining their credibility. This erosion of authority complicates the leader's ability to enforce essential but difficult decisions, undermines the government's capacity to plan for the long term, and makes it challenging to inspire the public to make sacrifices for collective progress. Why voters matter. A crucial yet often overlooked element of strong leadership is the responsibility of the population itself. Effective leadership is only possible if the electorate is engaged, informed, and willing to prioritize substance over superficial qualities. Good leaders depend on voters who are educated about complex issues, are willing to support leaders who make tough but necessary decisions, recognize the long-term impacts of policies even if they require sacrifice, and are cautious of charisma and prioritize capable candidates. Singapore's success story highlights the importance of an engaged and responsible population. Under the leadership of figures like Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore developed from a struggling post-colonial city-state into a prosperous and well-managed nation. However, this success was not solely the result of strong leadership. The people of Singapore were willing to support a government that often made difficult and unpopular choices for the long-term benefit of the country. This model suggests that good leadership and a supportive population are interdependent. The path forward. The decline of effective leadership across developed nations isn't an inevitable trend. It's a problem that can be addressed if societies are willing to make certain changes. Reversing this decline will require rethinking societal priorities, the qualities we value in leaders, and how citizens engage with their governments. Ultimately, the responsibility of leadership quality falls on both leaders and the people they serve. The future of leadership depends not just on those who seek to lead, but on those who choose to follow. With global challenges like climate change, economic volatility, and social inequality on the horizon, the need for strong, principled, and visionary leaders is greater than ever. As we look toward the future, we must ask ourselves, what kind of leaders do we want, and what are we willing to do to support them? The answer to this question will shape the next era of leadership for generations to come.
Vietnam, I consider to be the most dynamic of all the ASEAN countries. You work there, you know. I've been there since 1992. They're energetic, they're intelligent, they're determined to make up for 40 plus years of war. We give scholarships to all our ASEAN neighbors, and the Vietnamese students are the most serious, the most intelligent, and score high marks, and they go back to build Vietnam. So I would say in 20 years, Vietnam will be a small tiger or a little dragon.
Lee Kuan Yew, the founding Prime Minister of Singapore, left a profound mark not only on his own country, but on the broader region of Southeast Asia. Beyond transforming Singapore from a tiny, resource-poor island into an economic powerhouse, he saw potential in another nation often marred by conflict and isolation, Vietnam. His approach to leadership, economic reform, and strategic partnerships laid a foundation for both nations' growth, providing a roadmap that remains relevant for developing countries today. At the end of this video, there are 3 key lessons that we can use in our everyday lives. A war-torn nation with promise. Lee Kuan Yew's insight extended beyond Singapore's borders. While he led Singapore to unprecedented success, he kept a close watch on the rest of Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam. Lee saw untapped potential in Vietnam, even as the country grappled with the devastation of the Vietnam War. At a time when many Western powers underestimated Vietnam, Lee believed that Vietnamese people's resilience and drive could be channeled into prosperity with the right policies. During the 1960s and 1970s, while the Vietnam War raged, Lee cautioned the United States and other nations about the conflict. He suggested that a political solution would better serve Vietnam's future than further military intervention. Lee felt that the Vietnamese people were deeply committed to their independence and would fight with determination for it, regardless of the hardships they faced. His nuanced understanding of Vietnam's culture and history led him to believe that Vietnam's future would ultimately be bright if given the chance to develop in peace, aiding Vietnam's transition to a market economy. When the Vietnam War ended in 1975, Vietnam faced a host of challenges. The war had devastated its economy, and the country's command-based economy struggled to meet the population's needs. By the late 1970s, Vietnam's economy was stagnant, and the government realized it was time for a change. The pivotal moment came when Vietnam's leaders invited Lee Kuan Yew to share his insights on economic reform. In 1992, Vietnamese Prime Minister Vo Van Kiet hosted Lee in Hanoi to discuss a transition to a more market-oriented economy. During his visit, Lee spent time with Vietnamese officials, providing first-hand insights from Singapore's experience with economic development. He emphasized that the nation could achieve rapid growth if it implemented effective policies and harnessed its human potential. One of Lee's key recommendations was to focus economic development efforts around Ho Chi Minh City. Lee viewed the bustling city as a dynamo that could drive economic growth nationwide, similar to how he transformed Singapore into a growth engine. By promoting Ho Chi Minh City as a center of business and industry, Vietnam could encourage investment and create jobs, spurring development across the country. Lee also encouraged Vietnam's leaders to learn from other rapidly industrializing nations, such as Taiwan and South Korea, which had made successful transitions from agriculture-based to industrial economies. Doi Moi, Vietnam's economic renovation inspired by Lee Kuan Yew's advice, Vietnam embarked on a series of reforms in 1986, under the policy of Doi Moi, or renovation. Doi Moi marked a shift from a centrally planned economy to a more market-driven model. Vietnam's leaders implemented a series of reforms that included agriculture, allowing private businesses, liberalizing prices, and opening up to foreign investment. This transition laid the foundation for Vietnam's transformation from one of the poorest nations to one of Southeast Asia's fastest-growing economies. The Doi Moi reforms quickly began to yield positive results. Vietnam's economy grew as foreign businesses invested, attracted by a more open economy and lower production costs. Vietnam became a manufacturing hub for everything from textiles to electronics, drawing comparisons to the Asian tiger economies like South Korea and Singapore. The policies Lee advocated helped Vietnam enter the global market, and the country's GDP per capita surged from a few $100s in the 1980s to over $3,000 USD today. The Vietnam-Singapore Industrial Parks. One of Lee Kuan Yew's most visible contributions to Vietnam's modernization is the Vietnam-Singapore Industrial Parks, VSIPs. These industrial zones, proposed in 1994 by Singapore's then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong, were developed in partnership with Vietnam and became a model of economic collaboration. The first VSIP opened in 1996 in Bac Ninh province, paving the way for a robust industrial base in Vietnam. Over the years, the VSIP initiative has expanded significantly, with 13 industrial parks now operating across 9 provinces in Vietnam. These parks have attracted over 900 companies and created close to 300,000 jobs, bolstering Vietnam's industrialization and providing critical employment opportunities. The VSIPs serve as a channel for knowledge transfer, as Singaporean companies bring advanced technology, management practices, and expertise to Vietnam. This industrial park model, rooted in Lee's vision of regional cooperation, exemplifies the positive impact of strategic partnerships, strengthening Vietnam-Singapore relations. The collaboration between Singapore and Vietnam did not end with the VSIPs. Over the years, the two nations have built a strong relationship that extends beyond economic ties. In 2013, Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong and Vietnam's Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung announced the elevation of their relationship to a strategic partnership. This partnership reflects not only the economic benefits that both countries enjoy, but also the mutual respect and shared vision that Lee Kuan Yew helped foster. Today, Singapore remains one of Vietnam's largest foreign investors, supporting projects that span a wide range of sectors, including manufacturing, finance, technology, and education. Vietnam, in turn, has become an important trading partner for Singapore, and the two countries work closely on regional security, environmental protection, and economic development initiatives within ASEAN. Lee Kuan Yew's legacy in Vietnam endures not only through industrial parks and economic policies, but also through the respect and admiration he cultivated among Vietnamese leaders and citizens alike. He viewed the Vietnamese as resilient, industrious, and capable, and his belief in their potential has proven prophetic. Vietnam has evolved from a war-torn country to a thriving economy, with robust growth and increasing prominence on the global stage. Even after his passing in 2015, Lee's influence continues to shape Vietnamese policy and development. His focus on building strong economic foundations, investing in human capital, and creating an environment conducive to foreign investment remains relevant in Vietnam's economic policies. His pragmatic approach to governance and emphasis on learning from successful models continue to inspire Vietnamese policymakers as they navigate modern challenges. Through his policies and insights, Lee not only transformed Singapore, but also provided guidance that helped Vietnam transition from a centralized economy to a thriving market economy. His impact on Vietnam's growth, through direct advice and strategic initiatives like the Vietnam-Singapore industrial parks, highlights his dedication to empowering other nations and fostering economic stability across Southeast Asia. The story of Lee Kuan Yew's influence on both Singapore and Vietnam showcases the transformative power of forward-thinking leadership. His contributions serve as an inspiration to current and future leaders, emphasizing that with vision and cooperation, even the most daunting challenges can lead to extraordinary successes. The 3 lessons we can use in our everyday lives from this story. Number 1. Embrace adaptability. Lee Kuan Yew succeeded because he was willing to adapt and make decisions based on what would work best, rather than on ideology. His approach to building Singapore's economy, and later advising Vietnam, was pragmatic and focused on practical outcomes rather than rigid plans. In everyday life, this teaches us to stay flexible, open-minded, and willing to try new approaches to solve problems. By assessing each situation based on current needs and available resources, we can make more effective decisions that drive real progress. Number 2. Invest in skills and self-improvement. A key part of Lee's vision for Singapore was a strong emphasis on education, skill development, and technical training to create a capable workforce. This helped the nation transition into a high-tech and industrial economy. For our daily lives, this reinforces the importance of continuous learning and building our own human capital, whether it's picking up a new skill, pursuing personal development, or learning from new experiences. Self-improvement is essential for long-term growth and resilience. Number 3. Value relationships and mutual support. Lee Kuan Yew understood the importance of strong relationships, not only within Singapore, but also with other countries. His support for Vietnam's transition to a market economy, his mentorship of their leaders, and the collaborative Vietnam-Singapore industrial parks highlight the power of building trust and mutual support. In daily life, this means valuing our connections, whether with family, friends, or colleagues, and actively supporting one another's growth and goals. By creating and maintaining strong collaborative relationships, we can achieve more together than we could alone.
In 1923, just 20 days apart, 2 boys were born who would grow up to become giants of Southeast Asia. One would build a nation, and the other a business empire. Lee Kuan Yew and Robert Kwok. Their lives, deeply shaped by the trauma of World War II, would be linked by their views and experiences with Japan. Their journeys reveal unique insights into a nation that has both inspired and troubled its neighbors in Asia. Through their stories, we glimpse a more complex and a better understanding of Japan than the one often portrayed in Western narratives. These two titans move from deep wartime resentment to pragmatic admiration, illustrating a journey from conflict to reconciliation. At the end of the video, there are 3 crucial lessons from their story that we can apply in our everyday lives. Chapter 1. The Shadow of War and Near-Death Experience. Lee Kuan Yew and Robert Kuok's early lives were set against the backdrop of British colonial rule in Malaya, a region that included modern-day Malaysia and Singapore. Both attended Raffles College in Singapore in 1941, where their paths crossed for the first time. However, their educations were abruptly interrupted by Japan's invasion during World War II. For both men, the war left a lasting impression. Japan's occupation of Malaya and Singapore between 1942 and 1945 was brutal, particularly for the Chinese population. Their memories of that time shaped how they would interact with Japan for decades to come. Chapter 2. Lee Kuan Yew's brush with death. Lee Kuan Yew, who would later become the founding father of Singapore, had a near brush with death during the Japanese occupation. In one of the most infamous atrocities of the war, the Sukching Massacre, the Japanese targeted Chinese men in Singapore. Between 25,000 and 50,000 Chinese men were killed. Lee Kuan Yew narrowly escaped execution. Hear this encounter from Lee himself.
10 days after the fall, we were told to collect ourselves in certain collection centers. So they said, go there. So I said, I have left my clothes behind. I did not feel good.
The gantry points were manned by Japanese soldiers, where they get all the young males together and register them, and some of them will be sent by lorries to be executed in the Sukching.
So I went back and stayed light low for a few days with my gardener. He had a laborer's quarters there, so I billeted myself with him. Well, I was lucky. Those who went on that lorry were taken to the beach and shot. Would have been.
But despite these painful experiences, Lee's views of Japan would evolve as his career progressed. Chapter 3. From Fear to Admiration. Lee Kuan Yew's feelings toward Japan underwent a significant transformation over time. Although his personal memories of Japan's occupation remained deeply etched in his mind, he recognized that Japan had become an economic powerhouse in the post-war period. As the prime minister of a young and developing Singapore, he saw the practical need for collaboration with Japan, especially in terms of investment, technology, and manufacturing expertise. In the 1960s and 1970s, Singapore was still struggling to industrialize. Lee realized that Japan's advanced industries, from electronics to automobile manufacturing, could provide the key to Singapore's economic development. His pragmatism led him to seek Japanese investment, despite the bitter memories of wartime atrocities. Chapter 4. Robert Kuok. From Resentment to Reconciliation. While Lee Kuan Yew's story is one of political strategists, Robert Kuok's journey with Japan is one of personal transformation. As the richest person in Malaysia, with a net worth exceeding 11 billion, Kuok's rise to prominence was tied closely to his interactions with Japan both during and after the war. During the Japanese occupation of Malaya, Kuok initially harbored deep resentment toward the invaders. However, his survival instinct led him to work for Mitsubishi, one of Japan's largest trading companies. At the young age of 20, Kuok was put in charge of Mitsubishi's rice department, a critical role that involved overseeing the entire rice trade in Japanese-occupied Malaya. While his position was born out of necessity rather than choice, the experience would prove invaluable. Kuok learned the intricacies of trade and business management from the Japanese, lessons he would later apply to build his own business empire. After the war, Kuok returned to the business world with a new set of skills and a network of connections. In the 1950s, he partnered with Mitsui, another major Japanese conglomerate, to establish a sugar refinery in Malaysia. This partnership would help him gain control of 80% of Malaysia's sugar market, earning him the nickname Sugar King of Asia. Kuok's relationship with Japanese businesses flourished in the post-war period as he recognized their integrity, discipline, and commitment to quality. Despite the painful memories of wartime occupation, Kuok found himself deeply admiring Japanese business practices and work ethics. Chapter 5. Modern Japan. Through their eyes. As both Lee and Kuok grew older, their views on Japan's future and role in the global order became more reflective. Lee Kuan Yew saw Japan's future as being inseparably tied to its relationship with the United States and China. He believed that Japan's alliance with the US was crucial to balancing China's growing influence in the region. However, he also warned that if US influence declined, Japan might become a client state to China, a situation he viewed as potentially destabilizing. Lee also speculated that Japan might one day pursue nuclear weapons as a means of deterrence, a development he believed would introduce new tensions in the region. For Kwok, Japan remained a country of contrasts. Despite his initial resentment of the Japanese during the war, he eventually came to view Japan as his favorite holiday destination. He admired the honesty and hard work of the Japanese people, although he remained critical of the country's failure to fully confront its wartime past. Kwok often remarked that Japan had been misled by a handful of criminal-minded men during the war, a perspective that allowed him to reconcile his personal experiences with his admiration for Japanese culture and business acumen. Today, Japan faces many of the challenges that both Lee Kuan Yew and Robert Kwok foresaw. An aging population, resistance to immigration, gender inequality, and economic stagnation continue to pose significant hurdles for the country's future growth. However, both men also saw great potential in Japan's strengths, its technological innovation, cultural cohesion, work ethic, and excellence in manufacturing. They believed that with the right adjustments, Japan could continue to play a leading role in Asia and the world. The stories of Lee Kuan Yew and Robert Kwok serve as a powerful reminder that even the most traumatic experiences can give rise to progress and collaboration. Their journeys, marked by resilience, pragmatism, and reconciliation, offer timeless lessons on leadership and diplomacy. As Southeast Asia continues to evolve, their legacies stand as testaments to the power of transformation, both personal and national, and the importance of moving beyond the past to embrace future opportunities. Here are the 3 lessons that we can take from their dramatic Japanese occupation. Number 1, practicality over emotion. Both Lee Kuan Yew and Robert Kwok experienced deep emotional trauma during the Japanese occupation. Yet they put aside personal feelings to pursue practical solutions for their countries and businesses. They understood that clinging to resentment would hold them back, while embracing pragmatism could lead to growth and success. When faced with difficult situations or conflicts, it's easy to get caught up in emotions. However, focusing on practical solutions rather than dwelling on anger or frustration can help you make better decisions and achieve long-term goals. Number 2, adapt and learn from adversity. Both men adapted to their difficult experiences during World War II and used the lessons learned to build a better future. Instead of being defined by their suffering, they grew from it. Lee by building a strong nation, and Kwok by creating a business empire. They showed that hardships can be a source of strength and valuable insights. Life's challenges can feel overwhelming, but they often come with valuable lessons. By embracing adversity as an opportunity for growth and learning, you can come out stronger and more resilient, just as Lee and Kwok did. Number 3, reconciliation leads to growth. Both leaders exemplified the power of reconciliation and cooperation. Despite their painful histories with Japan, they recognized that moving forward by working together with those who were once adversaries would lead to mutual success. This attitude of collaboration helped them build thriving careers and countries. Holding grudges or refusing to work with others because of past issues can limit your potential. Forgiveness and collaboration, even with those you've had conflicts with, can open up new opportunities for personal and professional growth. These lessons from Lee Kuan Yew and Robert Kwok's experiences teach us the importance of letting go of the past, adapting to challenges, and embracing practical solutions for a better future. In this video, we'll begin by delving into the secret relationship between Israel and Lee Kuan Yew's government, uncovering how it developed and evolved. Next, we'll explore Lee Kuan Yew's powerful insights and warnings on the complex dynamics between Israel and Iran in the Middle East. Finally, we'll highlight 3 key lessons from his strategic approach that offer valuable takeaways we can apply to our own lives. In 1965, Singapore was a newly independent nation, vulnerable and defenseless. Its founding Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, realized the country's need for a strong military to ensure its survival. He reached out to various nations, including India, Egypt, and Israel, seeking assistance in building Singapore's armed forces. However, both India and Egypt turned him down. Reluctantly, Lee turned to Israel, despite fears that accepting Israeli assistance might provoke hostility from neighboring Muslim-majority countries. This concern was valid given the tensions surrounding Israel in the Middle East and its conflicts with Arab nations. In November 1965, Israeli military advisors secretly arrived in Singapore under the guise of Mexicans to mask their true identity. They were tasked with providing military training and helping Singapore establish its defense system. Under their guidance, Singapore adopted a conscription system modeled after the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF. Lee Kuan Yew's decision to build a national service army was critical to Singapore's survival. He believed that without the ability to defend itself, Singapore's future would be uncertain and its citizens would lack confidence in the nation's prospects. Within a short time, Singapore developed a credible defense force with military training, strategy, and discipline influenced by Israeli expertise. Despite their help, Singapore's relationship with Israel remained mostly secret, as Lee did not want to alienate the Muslim-majority countries surrounding Singapore. By 1967, Israel had achieved a stunning military victory in the Six-Day War in which it defeated several Arab nations and significantly expanded its territory. This victory reassured Lee that Israel was a powerful and reliable ally. It also boosted Singapore's confidence in its own military capabilities, which had been built on Israeli guidance. In 1968, Singapore made significant military purchases from Israel, including 72 tanks. A year later, in 1969, Singapore formally established an Israeli embassy in the country. Despite this, Lee Kuan Yew remained cautious about fully embracing public ties with Israel, especially given Singapore's delicate position in a region with a large Muslim population. Chapter 1. Economic Lessons from Israel. While military support was a critical part of the Israel-Singapore relationship, Lee also found inspiration in Israel's economic strategies. At the time, Israel was a small nation, surrounded by hostile neighbors, and yet it had managed to build a strong economy by forging ties with industrialized nations in Europe and America. Israel had also developed unique industries, such as exporting fruits, flowers, and other goods to Europe despite being boycotted by neighboring Arab countries. Lee applied similar strategies in Singapore, seeking links with developed countries and attracting industrial investments from Europe, Japan, and the United States. This approach helped Singapore leapfrog its neighbors in economic development, transforming it from a small trading port into a global economic powerhouse. Despite Israel's significant contributions to Singapore's military and economic development, Lee Kuan Yew maintained a careful distance from publicly recognizing Israel. For years, Israel had pressured Singapore to officially recognize it as a sovereign state and establish an embassy in exchange for continued military support. However, Lee was unwilling to comply immediately, fearing it would create hostility with Singapore's Muslim-majority neighbors. This delicate balancing act reflected Lee's political foresight. He knew that openly aligning Singapore with Israel too early could jeopardize Singapore's stability and security. Eventually, after the Six-Day War and the confidence gained in Singapore's own defense capabilities, Singapore did establish formal diplomatic ties with Israel, but always remained cautious in its public statements about the Middle East conflict. Chapter 2. The Two-State Solution and Singapore's Position. Throughout his leadership, Lee Kuan Yew and Singapore remained committed to advocating for a peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Singapore consistently supported the two-state solution, which called for the creation of an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. Lee and other Singaporean leaders believed that peace between Israel and Palestine was essential for long-term stability in the Middle East. He believed that both sides needed to coexist and live in peace, as there was no viable alternative. Singapore's position on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict also highlighted its commitment to maintaining religious harmony, both within its borders and in its foreign relations. Chapter 3. Lee Kuan Yew's warnings on Middle East policy. In his later years, Lee Kuan Yew issued stark warnings about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the broader instability in the Middle East. He emphasized that the failure to resolve the conflict would have severe consequences, not only for the region but for global peace. Lee was particularly critical of the role of the United States in the Middle East.
Two countries are rooted in the biblical heritage.
But we have a bond to Israel that's much stronger. It's a moral commitment.
It was created to fulfill the long-standing dream of the Jewish people to return to the home of their biblical origins.
Come, let us declare in Zion the word of God. The founders of my country saw a new promised land.
America's commitment to Israel's security is rock solid and unwavering.
Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel, and I have said that before, and I will say it again.
I recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
You need not be a Jew to be a Zionist. I am a Zionist.
He argued that only the U.S. had the power and influence to push Israel toward a peace agreement with the Palestinians. However, Lee believed that the U.S. had failed to exert sufficient pressure on Israel, largely due to the powerful pro-Israel lobby in Washington. He warned that unless the U.S. took a more neutral and active stance in pursuing a two-state solution, the conflict would continue to fuel anti-American sentiment and global instability. Lee also pointed out that the illegal expansion of Israeli settlements in Palestinian territories was a significant obstacle to peace. He noted that ultra-conservative factions in Israel viewed the land as a divine right, making it even more difficult to reach a compromise with the Palestinians. Chapter 4: The Iranian Challenge and Nuclear Threats. In addition to his warnings about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Lee Kuan Yew was deeply concerned about Iran's ambitions in the Middle East. He viewed Iran as a major obstacle to peace, driven by its historical rivalry with Sunni Arab nations and its desire to assert dominance in the region. Lee believed that Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons posed a grave threat to regional stability. He argued that if Iran succeeded in developing a nuclear bomb, it would trigger a dangerous arms race in the Middle East. Israel, already believed to have nuclear weapons, would be on high alert, and other countries in the region might seek to develop their own nuclear arsenals in response. Lee expressed skepticism about Iran's claims that it did not want a nuclear weapon, believing that any country in Iran's position would seek one if it had the capability. He warned that the situation could escalate to the point where nuclear weapons were used in the Middle East, with catastrophic consequences. In one of his most chilling predictions, Lee Kuan Yew speculated that the Middle East could be the site of the first use of nuclear weapons since World War II. He believed that the deep-rooted animosities between Israelis and Arabs, as well as between Sunnis and Shias, made the region particularly vulnerable to irrational decision-making in times of crisis. Lee's warnings were not just about military threats, but also about the long-term consequences of failing to address the underlying issues driving conflict in the region. He emphasized that as long as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remained unresolved, it would continue to fuel extremism, terrorism, and instability. Chapter 5: Lessons for the Future. Lee Kuan Yew's insights into the Middle East, Israel, and global diplomacy offer important lessons for today's world. His pragmatic approach to Singapore's foreign policy, particularly in balancing relations with Israel while maintaining ties with Muslim-majority countries, demonstrates the importance of careful diplomacy in a complex world. Moreover, Lee's warnings about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the dangers of nuclear proliferation in the Middle East remain relevant today. The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians continues, and the threat of nuclear weapons in the region has not diminished. Ultimately, Lee believed that peace in the Middle East was essential for global stability. He argued that only through rational diplomacy, compromise, and international cooperation could the world hope to prevent further violence and conflict in the region. As tensions continue to rise between Israel, Iran, and other nations in the Middle East, Lee's words serve as a reminder of the urgent need for solutions to these long-standing issues. The world can no longer afford to ignore the warnings of leaders like Lee Kuan Yew. In an era of rising extremism, nuclear threats, and global uncertainty, the lessons of the past are more important than ever in shaping a peaceful and stable future. Chapter 6: The 3 lessons that we can draw from Lee Kuan Yew's approach to this conflict. Number 1. Practicality over ideology. Lee Kuan Yew's approach to diplomacy was rooted in practicality. Even though it was politically risky for Singapore to align with Israel, Lee understood that securing military help was essential for the country's survival. He focused on what was practical and necessary, rather than getting caught up in ideology or emotional reactions. In life, we often face difficult decisions. Instead of being swayed by emotions or the opinions of others, it's better to evaluate situations based on facts and what will benefit us in the long run. Whether it's in relationships, work, or personal choices, being practical and making rational decisions can lead to better outcomes. Number 2. The power of long-term vision. Lee didn't just think about the immediate future. He planned for Singapore's long-term success. Whether it was building a strong military or forging economic ties with developed nations, Lee's decisions were always focused on securing Singapore's place in the world for decades to come. In our personal lives, we should adopt a long-term mindset. Short-term gains can be tempting, but focusing on sustainable success, whether it's in career growth, health, or personal development, will provide lasting results. Planning and patience are key to achieving bigger goals. Number 3. Balance and diplomacy. Lee Kuan Yew masterfully balanced Singapore's relationships with Israel and its Muslim-majority neighbors. He understood the importance of maintaining good relations with all sides and carefully navigating complex political landscapes. This allowed Singapore to benefit from its partnerships without alienating others. In our interactions with people, it's crucial to balance different relationships. We may face conflicts or competing interests, but maintaining diplomacy, understanding other perspectives, and finding common ground can help us build stronger, more positive connections in life, whether with friends, colleagues, or family.
One of the questions in our minds here has been that about the future of China and its relationship to Southeast Asia. Some people are saying that China is now so divided politically that there is no great danger for Southeast Asia in the future. Speaking as a Chinese who understands China, can you make an estimate or a guess as to the future of China? Do you think in the near future it will become again a unified country, a strongly unified country that might represent some kind of a danger to Southeast Asia?
First of all, I can't speak as a Chinese because I am a Singaporean. I am of Chinese ethnic stock. And I think this is crucial. I mean, if you ask me to speak as a Chinese...
As an ethnic Chinese.
Yeah, well, you know, the Chinese People's Republic in Peking will be, I think, quite rightfully indignant, and so will the other aspirant in Taipei. But speaking as a Singaporean, with some of the built-in memory programming of the Chinese people, I would say that if you believe that the Chinese people will just splinter up into so many warlord communist committees, each governing a province or even part of a province, then you will make one of the gravest mistakes about Asia. I think I've traveled around the world often, and you know, people don't know that I come from Singapore, and they treat me as a Chinese, or as a Chinaman in the old days, as they used to call them. And they used to say, Chiang Kai-shek, you know, in the middle 40s, and nowadays, of course, Mao Zedong. I'd say that they are determined as a people to unify and build a modern, powerful, wealthy Chinese nation. And I say good luck to them. And I think the moment they get prosperous, good luck to me, because I'll be much safer. I don't believe, however, you know, the simple theory that they're just going to send their armies across and eat up Southeast Asia. It's too simple.
Because the major changes that are taking place is the recovery of China and to a lesser extent of India, the places they occupied 2 centuries or 3 centuries ago before Western colonization blanketed them. 3 centuries ago, they were, between the two of them, 60% of the world GDP, just the population and the production that they put out. China is again on the growth path. She's now a member of WTO. She knows that every year she's growing faster than anybody else, and can do that for another 20, 30 years because they've got such an enormous number of workers back in the West, in the hinterland. 8%, 9%, 10%, no trouble at all. But after that, then they reach a ceiling where the labor is concerned, and then they got to increase productivity. But by then, in 30 years, they would have an economy, not per capita, but in total terms, bigger than the USA, which means they've got resources to build up political, strategic, and other influence. And in fact, in anticipation of that, people already treat her differently because they know that this is going to be a big fellow around the block. It's a watershed. I mean, the world order that we knew was dominated by the Caucasian peoples. Europe, technology, sailing ships and aircraft, they conquered the world. Industrialization.
Globalization.
Globalization. Well, industrialization first, and then they globalize it. And America is the extension of Europe, with a difference in that she's more embracing of other races. The 20th century was the American century. the first half of the 21st century, a large part of it will still be the American. But I believe the second half, you will have to share top places with China and also with India, make space for them too.
What should the United States do as it looks at the inevitable growth of China as a dominant player? What would be a wise foreign policy?
I think...
Because you have 2 or 3 decades before it reaches its full strength.
No, even in 3 decades it won't reach its full strength. In 3 decades, its per capita is still about 1/3 of America.
Its gross domestic product.
Well, for it to reach America's standard of living and standard of technology will take more than 100 years.
So what should the United States do while it has the position it has now?
I think make sure that they feel that they are accepted at the top table.
Make sure that China feels like it's accepted at the top table.
Yes, your place is waiting for you when you make it, but you've got to play by the rules of the game. And the key really is whether the next generation, this generation understands it. They know that they have no chance competing against the West, America especially, in technology and especially military technology. There's absolutely no chance. Let me build an aircraft carrier to guard the shipping lines where they carry oil and other minerals. This is the first time where the Chinese are growing, but dependent on the world for its resources.
But they're going around the world signing up contracts in Iran and in Africa. And...
Absolutely, but before that, it's all within the Chinese empire. They don't have to worry about the rest of the world. This time, they have to worry about the rest of the world, because without the resources, the oil, the iron ore, nickel, whatever, the growth will stop.
Will they be able to create the domestic demand that's necessary as they find exports reduced?
Slowly. But in the meantime, there's keeping the economy going by enormous expenditure on infrastructure in the West. High-speed roads, high-speed railways, airports, telephone lines, bringing water from the south up to the north where it's arid and dry. Huge, enormous, mammoth projects. That keeps it going.
What do you guys think? Is his journey from birth to the end of his life deserve some praises? And how about his predictions? Please leave your comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.